And we're live.
All right.
Here it is.
All right, so tonight is our Iron Rules of Tomasi episode. We're going to go through all 9 from year 1. If you guys haven't seen it yet, we got the links down below. Go read them up. Right now, we're just going to go through them one by one, starting with Frame. Let me bring up the window here.
It's a great episode.
Yes, this is
just say that.
Clutch stuff. We may or may not have a special guest. We'll have to wait and see. All right. Without any further ado, James, why don't you start us off with this one?
Oh, all right. We're talking about Frame tonight. Frame is everything. Everyone says Frame is everything, so that means it's true. Always be aware of the subconscious balance of whose frame and which you're operating. And I think that is the most important thing about Frame. I mean, you should have Frame, but you need to be aware in whose reality you're operating. So
yes, absolutely.
In terms of having Frame, what Frame is, it's directly related to your own personal value and belief system. So even guys with low SMV can have a strong Frame. It just depends on your internalization level and self-confidence and that sort of thing. So in terms of having Frame towards women, and I guess I'm trying to find the right way to say this, but you should always be cognizant that you're better than her and she's there for you and not the other way around. And those are 2 good ways to make sure that you stay in your reality and operate within that sphere. And
if the socioeconomic standard or the valuation, let's turn my volume up here. When he's saying being better, we're trying to, the whole framework of this is to kind of do an end run around hypergamy. Women want to date men that are better than them, whether it's money, status, power, what have you, physicality. Women date up, not down. And by maintaining the frame of whose reality you're kind of operating within, you're kind of grooming the relationship to operate in that sense. So we'll go through each one of our own shorthands. This is all straight out of Rollo's year 1 stuff. For me, frame means it's the framework in which the relationship operates. When 2 people meet, there's a neutral frame, and it's kind of like a vying for dominance in a sense. Women don't want to dominate the guys if they're going to be able to look up to them. So you have got to bring that leadership quality and being more stronger, usually higher income, more status, more social alignment, stuff like that. It's the total package. They're looking for guys that have more than they do. And throughout relationships, this is always going to be tested. This is where shit tests come into play.
Yeah, it kind of brings the 2 points that James has brought up in the past of like status creates desire. And that's absolutely the central truth, right? And what we're saying here is if it's not you're better than her, it is your status should be higher than hers.
Yep.
Right. And let me elaborate on that for a second. Women should be an accessory, right? Something that you want in your life, not something that you need in your life, because you have a mission and you're a self-driven, self-validated person, right? And if you have a woman, it's because you want a woman in your life. And I would say kind of the other piece of it is exactly what we talked about in the previous episodes, which is that frame is your mental point of origin, right? That's kind of what James was trying to get at there, or at least that's my take on it, is having a strong point of origin to come from is everything in your interactions.
Right. Women should be a value-added benefit, not your mission. They're a consequence of your success in life. Put it that way.
Yeah, Vasily always says that women are a lagging indicator of success. And I think that's something that's very, very important to like really internalize, because if you can always take a look at where you are by looking at if you have girls or not, and if you do, the quality of the women that you have. So
especially the latter point. Yeah, absolutely.
So
it's like interesting that you say that.
They're very, very good. I mean, women are very, very good at both getting resources and the way they do that is they're really good at figuring out if you're the real deal or not.
But women also know
So-
that the best way to be married to an admiral is to marry a lieutenant, right? Like they also know that, right? Or the smart ones do, at least, like the ones that are savvy about things. So there's a corollary there. I don't want to get too far into it, but it has to do with hypergamy, and that's like catching guys in the upswing, guys that you know are going to have the right qualities and are going somewhere and are on track to be somewhere that they're going to be. You know, if you're a woman, why wouldn't you grab onto that? And that goes back to the whole status creates desire piece.
So I just wanted two things to add on to that. One was James, what was it you were just saying about I just lost my train of thought.
About women are a lagging indicator of success.
Mhm.
You should be looking at if you have women, and if you have women,
Oh,
the quality of
that's
women
what
you have.
So the quality of women that a man has in his life, especially those that he's married to, that he's invested in fully,
Mhm.
absolutely says everything you need to know about a man's true inner game.
Mhm.
Done deal. The other part of this is
True.
women interested. So you see a lot of this with in high school and younger women where they're dating complete losers, but it's like you said with the upswing, they're seeing these guys for the potential. So the guy who wants to be in a band and is just playing in his garage with a couple of buddies, probably when you play the odds, going nowhere in life. But he has the potential, or the guy who wants to be an artist. He's all creative and shit. And maybe they see something where there's potential there. That's what they're attracted to, is the potential, not where they're at right now. So
Yeah.
for guys that are in high school, they're younger, you're trying to figure out what is it that these guys have. It's not that anything they have right now, it's the potential status that they will have in the future. That's what the women are attracted to.
Yeah, that
I
goes
would
to
also
developing the mystery piece and things like that, right? This whole air of mystique around your masculinity.
Yeah, and I would also say that I don't know if like girls in high school are really thinking about. They're not in the same frame like mindset as women in their like early mid 20s,
Yeah.
that sort of age. Like that. I mean, the relationships in high school, you can't really like. If you're funny, you can like you can get laid. If you can get a girlfriend. If if they don't really have a good framework to decide like whether or not a guy is high quality. They just like
And
they
that's
just
what
think
I'm
they're
saying.
cool, or for some
Right.
reason like
I think
don't
it's a
think that-
microcosm. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
A lot of this, like I said, it's we said this earlier in the pre-show. Attraction's not a choice. A lot of this doesn't make any logical sense.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. So I think we've covered everything we need to know about frame at the outset.
Well, it could be a whole episode, but for this slide, yeah.
Yeah. For right now, like I said, we're just covering, again, just kind of circle back around. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, right now we're just going over the terms and conditions,
High level concepts.
terms, concepts, the framework of what TRP is kind of centered around. So if you haven't watched the previous material, please go do after this show. If you have comments, questions, post them down below. We'll get through to them in the order they were posted after we get through the slideshow. So give us a little while and we'll circle back around. All right, so moving on to rule number 2. Never, under pain of death, honestly or dishonestly reveal the number of women you've been with. You have nothing to gain and everything to lose. And no matter what you say, it's never going to be the right answer or what they want to hear. They might, I don't care how much they cajole you, don't do it.
Yeah. I don't think there's much more that needs to be said here. There's so many anecdotes that you can read on the red pill and yada yada yada. But the bottom line is like, and to draw a larger point, women ask questions all the time that they don't want answers to. And if you're savvy enough, you can ask like, "You sure you want the answer to that?" I don't really think you do, and make it into a game because it's just a game.
And it's sort of like a shit test or a fitness test in a sense.
Yeah.
What you were just saying is probably a really great way of handling it.
Totally.
Yeah, I
another
mean, they
thing
want to
too is-
see. They want to see that you've. They want to see that you've had sex with a lot of girls, but they don't want to hear it. So
This is what I was just about to say. They want it.
yeah,
You want to show, not tell.
Mhm.
So if you
That's
have
the difference between overt and covert communication.
yes. So and how you do this is by having women in your social circle who may or may not want to hook up with you, but the hamster gets spinning, and it does the work for you. It creates a little bit of
Have a
dread
lot
and
of
that
followers
intrigue.
on Instagram. Yeah.
Or Twitter. Speaking of, I have Twitter now. So yeah, I got a link. If
Boom.
I don't have it down below, I'll throw it out there.
Follow Joe on Twitter.
There
Do
you
it.
go. Yeah.
I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Snapchat. I only keep it there for a couple minutes. That's
Okay.
gone.
I'm on OnlyFans.
That's it for only $4.99 a month.
$5.99 a month. You guys can subscribe.
I didn't mean to shortchange you. $5.99 a month.
Yeah.
Mike, you want to take this
What
one?
did you say my price was?
I said $4.99. You said
Oh,
$5.99.
fuck you.
So I'm sorry.
That's our one for the show. He just burned it. Ah,
Great. That's fine.
All
It's
right,
okay.
so-
I'll take that. Yeah. So iron rules of Tomasi number 3.
number 3.
Any woman who makes you wait for sex, or by her actions implies she's making you wait for sex, it's never worth the wait. Chris Rock has an interesting bit on this about like when you're dating somebody and you go to travel, they'll tell you how good, the pussy's going to be when you get there, right? And it's the same pussy, right? It's a really funny bit. So go look that up on YouTube. But when women who are truly attracted to a man and lust for him, will do virtually anything to get their alpha fix. And this goes back to what we were talking about on the pre-show, which is that there's only one thing to vet for, and that's true desire.
Yep, that lust, that passion. They will. I think Rollo was the one that said it. Maybe not. I don't know. If I'm
Yes.
quoting somebody else, please let me know.
Well, he said that you can't negotiate desire.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, attraction's not a choice. You can't negotiate desire. Attraction's not a choice is out of David D'Angelo back like 10, 15 years ago. Something he said. But yeah, it's. I just lost my train of thought. Damn it.
It's okay. Second bullet.
If only Rollo were here to tell us what his true thoughts were.
That's what we need to hear. But moving on. So the second bullet point, waiting for it, and let's be clear. Waiting for it is not just sex; it's anything. Waiting on a woman for anything is a beta, bait, and switch. It's a shit test, and it's just there's no reason to wait on a woman for anything. I would say unless you're meeting them for a coffee date and you wait 5, maybe 10 minutes, and then call it. Like, don't wait on women for anything.
Yeah. I don't know if I would even wait 5 minutes, but
We'll talk later in this course about how to navigate that. Ways to avoid time wasters.
Yeah, but it goes back to like your status as a high value male. You should respect your own time.
Right. Now, there's some caveats to this. So generally speaking, I would say that if they're making you wait for it, they see you as the beta boyfriend. So this is where like women that are in lust with a guy will not make them wait for fear of losing the guy's attention. Whereas guys that they see as boyfriend material will make them wait because they don't want to come off as being slutty. It's ASD writ large on society. So you got to be mindful of those kind of things. If you're looking for girlfriends and you're throwing out boyfriend signals, you're going to get put in timeout and made to wait. The other caveat to this is red pill women, their whole game is to screen for relationships, so they don't give it up quick. They make the guys wait. So they're playing a different game than what we are. So
Yeah,
just be mindful of that.
The tough part of that is like feminine dating strategy, and I don't spend a lot of time there, but that's what they're preaching right now is like get a guy to commit to you before you do anything with them, yada yada yada. Here's
And
the
that's fair, but that's not what we're doing. Just
It
so
is
we're clear.
fair. But here's the distinction that Rollo draws. And I think this is super key. And again, it's not my idea, but Rollo has brought this up on a couple of podcasts of a woman should, if she has rules, like let's say she's really religious and she doesn't want to have sex before marriage. She should, even if she's going to hold to that rule and she doesn't want to have sex with you before marriage, she should want to break that rule, right? She should have this underlying desire that's saying, you know what, I just can't do this because I'm struggling with this. This is what I believe. I really like you. I want you a lot. But if that's her desire, she should really reach the limit of what she's willing to do. And then you decide as a guy how to handle that, if you're okay with that or not, right? But
well, I would add to that though, that like a woman who's waiting for marriage to have sex, she's really not the girl that you're considering under this rule.
I would say it's
that's
culturally
fair.
dependent, but yes.
To each their own. But what you're saying, though, is absolutely critical. They should be having those heavy makeout sessions, heavy petting sessions, all of that where they're taking it right to the line and like, they want to, but they can't because
They should get really excited about you.
You absolutely should be.
That's true for sure.
The lust and passion has to be there, or it's not going to work.
And that goes back to the last bullet, which is attraction is not a choice. You can't negotiate it, right? That's all there is. It's just a natural thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's something that you can foster by all the things that we talk about on this, this YouTube channel of you can put yourself in a good position, but there's no way that you can look at a girl and say, I want her to like me. Desire is just a natural thing, and the heart wants what the heart wants in a lot of cases.
All right. So I'm going to throw the StreamYard link up there. If you guys want to join the chat, you can. Otherwise, we're going to continue on to number 4.
Mhm.
I'm going to take this one because I got burned by this a couple times.
Yeah.
Never under any circumstance live with women you're not married to or planning to marry within 6 months. I don't know where you came up with the 6 months kind of time frame, but if you're not going to live with them, if you're not going to marry them, if it's not long, if you're not thinking this is it, this is the one you're going to be with forever, which there's issues with that in its own right. Yeah, you should not be cohabitating. And there's other issues we found with like the success sequence. I did a video on this a while back. Couples that get married versus couples that cohabitate, wildly different financial outcomes over the long run. And I think it comes down to what guys who cohabitate versus guys that get married, the way they approach relationships and the permanence, their screening and their qualities are different. There's a very big demarcation on how guys approach dating versus hooking up, or dating for the long term and just hooking up and having fun and nothing serious. Wildly different approaches. Be mindful of this and realize like what's important to you. Make sure you have intentionality in why you're dating somebody. Is it just for flings? You're not going to do anything serious? Then hell no, you should be living with these people. Keep that, put the walls up, keep them at bay, spin the plates. That's fine. But if you are thinking long term that you're going to navigate or you're going to narrow the plates down to just one girl or two girls, maybe you'll have an open LTR or something like that, then it's going to be different screening qualities that you're going to look for. And you're going to see that the different elements of the relationship will take on importance in ways that you wouldn't have expected in other types of relationships. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think the interesting thing about this is when you give out guys like when you give out advice like don't live with a woman unless you're planning to marry them within 6 months, or don't get married, right? Like just blanket advice about don't get married. We talked about that last week of there's not a lot of upside for guys if you get married. I think when you give out advice like that, the natural tendency for guys that haven't been exposed to these ideas is like, well, why? And for me, when you talk about the why, it comes down to one simple thing, and that's women are, and we'll talk about this later, women love opportunistically, and they will at a moment's notice absolutely just scorched earth, go take care of themselves, burn it down, leave, like throw your clothes out in the front yard, take off with the kids. Women love opportunistically, and there's always a chance that that's going to happen. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't like take things as they come or be prepared for anything, like be confident within yourself. What I'm saying is when you are promoting a woman to a plate status, like realize that she can always demote herself by just, cutting ties with you. Always, always, always. And that gets in the couple bullets that you've got here.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, something that I would like to add to this is never get married and never cohabitate.
Yep. Yeah.
Pretty sure so the marriage thing I think is a caveat. There's a difference between legal marriage and just generic. You might have the ceremony, you might have the family and friends, the whole blah, right? But you don't sign the dotted line as far as the state's concerned. That still gives you a little bit of protection in a legal sense. The only thing you really gain from getting legally married is tax treatment benefits. That's about it. All of the other stuff you can handle through a power of attorney.
Yeah.
And a lot of states now with medical benefits, they confer it to your partners anyways.
Yeah. And the only issue I take with that, and I agree with you guys in large part, the only issue I take with that is like, if you want to have kids and have a family, and that's a whole nother slippery slope of like, if you gotta be willing to understand exactly what I just described of like, she could blow it up at any time. I don't care if you have kids or a family, she can blow it up at any time. But if you do want kids and you do want a family, you're probably going to need to get married.
It's the married gun metaphor. Every time you get married, you are handing a woman a loaded gun, and she is pointing it at your head. And at any point in that relationship, she can pull the trigger and get rewarded with cash and prizes for doing so.
It's a challenging thing, and you got to put if you're going to be in that situation, not to just completely go off the rails, but if you're going to put yourself in that situation, as the only married guy here, you have to be realistic about like, hey, it's not you, it's just your turn, right? Like if things go south, like you got to accept the consequences of that, right?
Absolutely. I think we've covered this one to death.
For sure.
Already. Number 5, halfway there. Never allow a woman to be in control of the birth control. This is so critical. Just like we were talking a moment ago about marriage, getting baby trapped is huge. And we were talking before the show about running the numbers. I don't think you guys realize how well it depends on the state. First, that's the first caveat right up front. It really does depend on the state. Where I'm at, child support is a wealth transfer vehicle from the higher earning parent to the lower earning parent. The reason that the state, it's not gender based, it's math. But the reason that men end up paying more money in the aggregate is because guys are almost exclusively the breadwinners. It's like 94% of relationships, something ridiculous. So especially it's a crazy amount of money, billions of dollars every year get transferred from men to women in the national scale just through child support alone. And this is all because you're paying taxes on the money that you have to give somebody else that you're never going to see.
Yeah, it's government sanctioned. Yeah.
And but the defense of this that I hear is that it's for the kids. Well, not really, because there's no there's no requirement that even one penny actually gets paid for the kids. The mom can take that money and blow it on hats. Nothing can ever happen.
There's a big wide berth of what is for the kids' benefit. Yeah.
Right. So, and the amount of money too is can vary wildly. We did this.
It's just a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
It's just a spreadsheet, which is arbitrary and really.
It is, and there's no cap. That's the other problem too. There's no realistic determination of how much money does the kid really need. So, is it $1,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month? If say the dad was a celebrity, sports athlete, whatever.
Totally.
If they're making millions of dollars a year, and you do the math, it comes out. What was it we said we saw? It was if a guy makes $1 million a year and a woman makes $50,000 a year, that guy will be paying about $16,000 in child support in the state of Maryland.
Look,
that's $195,000 a year income or something like that.
That's absurd. And there are so many, most guys have heard a lot of horror stories about this stuff, right? If you've been around for a long time. And I don't want to overcomplicate it with, and make it into a politics thing, because there are valid arguments there. But for the purposes of this slide, let's boil it down to: do not listen to their words, only their actions. Do not listen to, oh, I'm on my birth control, I just had my period, blah, 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 blah. If I had $1 for every, good-hearted, moral Christian woman that I heard that was actually on birth control that got pregnant, right, I'd be able to buy a nice bottle of scotch. So
you and me both. Yep.
The whole point here is it's very simple. It's a dominance thing. Is never let a woman be in control of and I think the original Iron Rule cuts off at birth. It doesn't even say birth control. Never allow a woman to be in control of the birth, which is never allow a woman to be in control of whether or not they get pregnant, to be clear.
Yep. I think I threw this slide here, this bullet point myself. Always use protection and cover your ass. I'm a big fan of the Tom Leykis flush it down the toilet. Yeah, it's bad for the plumbing, but you know what? It's a lot better than getting baby trapped and paying.
Dude, just wrap it up.
Yeah,
it's that simple.
I did this on the finance side of on the show. The average amount to raise a kid from birth to 17, not to 18, to 17, as of January of this year, is $233,000.
That's absurd.
17 years.
Easy.
Yeah.
So you can either have a kid or
the millions. Easily get into the millions. You could spend $1 million on raising a kid. And look, I say that as like, I'll be fully honest. My wife and I are trying to get pregnant right now, but the guys that are listening to this don't need that advice. They need the advice of like, wrap it up, dude.
Yeah.
The guys that are listening to this need to be told, wrap it up.
Now, Stephanie and I, we had kind of argued this point a little bit on the paternity fraud kind of angle. If you let them know up front what your intentions are, and then it won't be a shock later on. If you say you never want to have kids, if you ever did, you'd get a paternity test just on principle. It's the seatbelt kind of methodology of approaching the subject. Much like if we're ever going to get married, there's going to be a what's it called? The prenup.
Which you aren't, by the way.
So, well, this is like you're kind of screening the woman in a sense where you're you're dropping these things early on in the relationship to kind of see how they were going to react, or just putting your intentions out there. Always put, like I said, intentionality is important. Make sure you're putting this stuff out there and being honest about your intentions and what you expect. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. But in this sense, two of the things that I would always say is, there would be a prenup because, family, I've already got a kid, so I got to make sure he's protected.
Mhm.
And two, you never know when the hospitals might screw up. So having that paternity test, you can frame it in such a way that it's a backup screen for the kid getting swapped. And this has actually happened. They found this out a couple times where the baby got swapped at a hospital. The bracelets got, or the things they put in their ankles got screwed up for whatever reason. Then years later, decades later, somebody found out they oopsed at the hospital by doing, the dad thought the woman had cheated on him.
There's
No, the
downside.
hospital just swapped the babies.
For guys, there's no downside to making sure that that's your kid. If you're
Well,
going
the
to raise
downside is going to be the grief that they're going to get if they haven't front loaded the expectations.
no,
So,
you're right. I'm saying there's no downside to getting a paternity test.
Right. And I talked about this on the Discord. It's called disqualifying the objection ahead of time.
Mhm.
By making sure you're clear and upfront about this stuff early on, they're not going to be surprised and butthurt later when you actually implement this stuff.
Mhm.
So, and if they are, it's like, you don't have a problem with what I said. It's just you thought I was going to change my mind. A guy I know in real life, he was dating a woman for many, many years, told her way back he doesn't want to have kids or get married. And periodically throughout the relationship, well, what do you think about this? He's like, I told you when we first got together, this is what I got. This is my deal. And you agreed to that by staying in a relarelationship.
And she hoped that he was going to change his mind.
She hoped that she was, exactly, but he didn't. And that's the important thing. That's the frame of what we're talking about. Goes back
That's
to rule
fine to
number one.
hope. That's fine to hope that somebody's going to change their mind. But then if you get angry at them for it after the fact, that's a whole different
And
thing.
that's how he disqualified that objection, by making it known ahead of time.
Mhm.
That's the key thing. So that's the takeaway right there. And again, we talked about all the rest of this, child support and blah.
Yeah, don't let anybody get angry at you for your
Yeah.
convictions. And it just as a quick aside, because we already covered this slide quite a bit. When I Say No, I Feel Guilty is the book that covers a lot of this.
And last bullet right here, Tom Likas. If you guys want a good podcast to listen to, go look him up. Quality stuff.
Mhm.
Let's see here.
Good deal. Who wants to read this one?
Well, since you mentioned it,
Okay. So, Iron Rules of Tomasi, number 6. Women are utterly incapable of loving a man in the way that a man expects to be loved. This goes to the Disney fantasy, right? Of
Yeah.
a lot of society tells young men and boys and even adult men that they should, man up, be the bigger guy, take care of a woman that's got one kid, 2 kids, as a single mom, or just the Disney fantasy of, the perfect woman is going to come along. It feeds into the one-itis thing. It's just not realistic, right? Like, men are capable of this idealistic love. But let's be honest here. Unconditional love is for kids. It really is. You should love your children unconditionally, right? And that's really who it's reserved for, and nobody else. The thing we talked about in the pre-show here is the idea that women love opportunistically and men love idealistically. So that goes to the first bullet point here, and I'll turn it over to one of you guys to cover the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Women just love the idea of you,
Mhm.
and for a little bit of time, or depending on your turn depends on how. Your turn depends on how long you can keep it fun and keep her interested and engaged.
that's the opportunistically aspect of is this guy the best I can get right now? It's the
Right.
right now that a lot of folks don't key in on.
Mhm.
So you guys, you might have a great relationship. Things might be going along just swimmingly, but maybe they went out for a girls' night and some strange caught her eye, gets that hamster spinning. So you got to be mindful of these things.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the world we live in. There's no negatives to women cashing in that check, blowing up the relationship for cash and prizes. Yes.
And if you've ever heard like how easy it is to get with chicks who have a boyfriend, and you've probably heard a lot that
That
a
was
lot
the sorry, don't mean to interrupt, but yes, this just going to throw us out there. What you just said is how we arrived at the branch swinging. That was what it was all
Right.
about.
yeah,
Was all you're doing is presenting an option. Whether or not a woman blows up a relationship to be with you, that's her choice. You're
Yeah.
just presenting yourself as an option.
Yeah, and they say, I'm sure that you've heard a lot of people say you don't have to be better, you just have to be different. And if you're different and better, I mean,
Yeah. Well, you're competing against one other guy if she's in a relationship.
Fair. But being
You-
different is interesting too, because the novelty is.
Oh,
This is where we can talk about this later in another show, but the vacation mentality. Men are susceptible to this as well, but women. I've never known a case of a women's vacation where at least one or more did not cheat. They always do. Every case I can think of. So if the women all go away for the vacation, the guys stay home, taking care of the kids. At least one of them in that group is going to hook up with some dude. Every single
Yeah.
real world example I can think of, that's happened. And I digress.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So Bruford's law, the corollaries, hypergamy, it all kind of congeals together in this one rule. A lot of overlap. All right. We're getting towards the end here. And again, if you guys, please give us a like if you like these videos. It helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and that notification bell so you get updates when we go live.
Yeah. Also, make sure to post questions on the live chat. We'll get to those at the end of the episode, and if we don't get to them, we'll cover them in the Discord after the live show.
Yep. I see all you guys watching. There's only a handful of questions, but there's a lot of people watching right now. So
Yeah.
feel free
So
to hit
hit
us
us
up.
on Discord.
Or Discord. Yeah, we'll actually be doing that after the show.
Yeah, either one.
Yep. So moving along here, it is always time and effort better spent developing new, fresh, prospective relationships than it ever will be in attempting to reconstruct a failed relationship. This is the Rooting Through the Garbage post. That's the link's down below. It's a good read.
Mhm.
Anybody that's been through a breakup and you want to get back with your ex, slap yourself and then go read this. All right. And this is also true of friendships, work relationships, and so on. This is where you get a lot of crab bucket mentality kicking in. And I'll give an example of this where guys, say, working on the line at GM or Ford on the assembly line, right? One of them gets promoted to becoming a foreman.
Mhm.
They're going to often find a lot of the guys that they were friends with who also worked on the line with them will no longer be friends with them over time. They're going to fall out of favor. And a lot of it's ego, it's jealousy. There's a lot of negative emotions that kind of come into play when you see one of your own rising above. It kind of reminds everybody of their own failures. And nobody likes that. Nobody likes being reminded that you could have had this if you worked a little bit harder or you done something a little bit different. And this other person got the accolades and you didn't. So naturally, there's the crab bucket mentality trying to bring him back down or drag him down. No, you don't want that job. No, you don't want to date that girl. No, you shouldn't hit the gym because you're already in good shape. All kinds of things come up. It's that crab bucket mentality. This is a good example of that. So it's like I said, it's not just relationships. It's also friendships and so forth. So it's always better to build fresh relationships where your status is higher than to try and break out of existing relationships going from low status to high status. Or if it's income, maybe you were making low amount of money, you go to college, you get a good job, whatever. Some of your older friends, they're not going to be around much longer. It's just the way it goes.
No, 100%. What I wrote down for this one is like the simple fact is whether it's a romantic relationship or otherwise, trust and respect is earned.
Yes.
Right. It's not just given. And that's the natural kind of way of relationships is if you want somebody to trust you, if you want somebody to respect you, you have to earn it. And once it's lost, it's nearly impossible to get back. And that's why this law exists.
This kind of ties into with my bullet point that I didn't put on the side, but we have in our notes from the show.
Mhm.
That respect, you got to earn it. And there's also, you got to keep it. And this is where we talked about before, disqualifying the objections ahead of time. A lot of guys find this community because a relationship blew up in their face because they didn't put their standards and expectations out there and what would happen if the women failed to measure up. Let me give an example. Going back to these girls' nights, the girls go out to the clubs. One of the girls disappears for a few hours after the club closed. No one knows what happened. No one's saying anything. We know what happened. So the guy blows that batter, finds out through trickle truth that she cheated. Well, how could he have avoided that from happening? Some people call this mate guarding. No, what happens is you tell them what you expect up front.
Mhm.
And if the woman's relationship material, she'll understand the importance of avoiding the appearance of impropriety.
Mhm.
Guys have to do this too. So you're not going to put yourself in situations where bad things can happen in the first place. That's how you know if you've got a good one. And it's the avoiding the appearance of impropriety. That's the key phrase to remember.
That's the whole. That's the central idea behind dread, right? Is that the only thing you can't control anybody, right? The only thing that's going to keep a woman from, not wilding out, cheating on, Chad, cheating on you, is she doesn't want to get dropped, right? Like you need to be at a high status because you need to be more desirable, and that's what's going to prevent, her from wanting to actually go out and seek a bunch of other guys, is because you have a lot to offer, right? So that's really where that comes from.
The notion of dread is also kind of loose back around the role one frame.
Yep.
So I think we've covered
true.
core points here. It's right here in the last bullet. Frame was already there. You go. Frame was already lost.
Rebuilt.
Yeah, rebuilding.
But the amount of work is far greater than building fresh prospects.
Exactly. That's the important takeaway, I think, from this slide right here, is that it's almost always better, easier, cheaper, faster, stronger, whatever, to build fresh relationships than it is to try and recover ones that have fallen apart.
Yeah, I mean, even where you can rebuild a relationship, the best way to do it is to not try.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that, if you understand my meaning, like
that's one of the 48 laws of power. Yeah,
you can't try to rebuild a relationship, but if you disengage hard, there's that's your best chance, really. Anyway.
Yeah, that has to do kind of with the idea of, if you're spinning plates spin themselves, right? Like women put themselves in a better position to be in a good relationship, right? That's kind of their responsibility and their obligation to keep it up to a large extent. Is that a corollary to what you were talking about?
I'm looking through the 48 laws of power. There's one in here that really caught my attention that kind of ties in what you're talking about.
I see.
Where you, I can't find it. I'll have to throw it down in the link below once we,
I guess
after the show.
Where I was trying to tie it in with what James said is the amount of work it takes is far greater. And my point is let them do the work. Let the women actually do the work. Like once you've actually put them in a position, that's the whole reason why you don't actually, you don't promote plates that have actually demoted themselves.
Right. Yeah, there's a ton of posts on Red Pill about how they can
don't forgive indiscretions.
Demoted self, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like if a woman has lost status, totally don't just give her a free pass, right? Mm-hmm. Just abundance mentality, go out and surround yourself with a bunch of other women, and let her earn it. Let her earn it back.
All right.
And even then,
really, I mean, if you have that abundance, will you even want it back?
And this is where it gets into the amount of energy and work it takes to recover is often more than it's just next, and then go on to and move on to the next.
Yeah, because that goes,
get another one.
It goes back to the other piece: is don't need any woman.
If you have abundance, if you've got a proper abundance, then it's not going to phase you much, anyways. Generally speaking. All right, I want to move on to the next one because we're coming up on 40 minutes already.
Let's do it.
Got some questions here. All right, number 8. Oh man, this is a good one. Always let a woman figure out why she won't hook up with you. Never do it for you. Mm-hmm. And like I said here, this is actually out of the Science of Sex Appeal. It's a really good, kind of like a documentary on Discovery Channel from years back. And it goes back to a sort of mating strategy. People kind of date and hook up with people in their own league. So if you are out of her league, and you're making it well known to her, but maybe she thought you were in her league, then you've just done yourself a disservice. You have nothing to gain, and this kind of goes into self-deprecating, which I think is the next slide.
Yeah, we don't want to jump the gun too much.
So don't tell women not to hook up with you. Let them figure it out on their own, all right? Or date you, or whatever your goal is in that relationship dynamic. Don't tell your employer why they shouldn't hire you. Let them figure that out.
Oh, yeah. There's two things that I would touch on here. I learned this in sales a long time ago, which is number one, assume the sale, right? Of just understand that if you think things are going to go well, a fraction of the time they will, right? Even a third of the time, If you're going to have success, then just assume that. And the other 2/3 of the time is when you assume the sale, it makes the rejection just minimal, right? It seems like the lesser of the two most likely outcomes.
It takes some of
And
the pressure off of approach anxiety as well.
totally.
Approach,
Totally does.
for those that don't know, that missed the first episode or one of the early episodes, approach anxiety is a mixture of stage fright and fear of rejection. Stage fright you get away with through repetition and just getting acclimated to that nervousness. Fear of rejection you get rid of by having success. And it's kind of the same thing. When you assume success, you're not really afraid of the rejection because you just, especially if you have the experience to back it up. So my note here was to don't dear. That was the defer. I forget the acronym. You had it down on lockdown.
Yeah, defend, explain, excuse, and rationalize.
That's
Don't
it.
do that.
Yeah, don't do that. If you're going to do anything, be clear. Make a statement of intent. That's a really good way to just be direct about what your intentions are. It's that intentionality. So many guys dance around what they want. They're afraid to make to rock the boat out of fear of losing the girl because they don't have abundance. It's hard to get over that when you're first starting out, but once you get over a certain threshold, you're going to realize that it's so empowering, and it's hard to put into words and describe what that feels like.
Well, here's what you're going to realize when you actually get out and experience what it's like interacting with other people is they're pretty forgiving. Like if you err on the side of I'm going to be really bold and I'm going to assume that this is going to go well and I'm going to actually just be insistent upon, don't be, an absolute, overly aggressive creep. But the point is, like, if you're enthusiastic is the good way to put it, of like you're interested and you're really overt about that and you're assertive, not aggressive, but assertive, and you're just out there putting yourself out there, 9 times out of 10, like, people will understand that and be forgiving. If they're not interested in return, they'll let you down easy. I found that, honestly, like, in my experience, I've talked to a lot of really beautiful women, and in my opinion, in my experience, they are the most forgiving people. They will let somebody down easy because there's a lot of downside of just being, a real jerk to guys, and they will absolutely be super nice and saying, "Oh, thanks, that's really sweet, but I have a boyfriend," or whatever it is.
And we're going to talk about this later in the series, but it's like the women that are in the bulk of the bell curve, they're kind of indifferent. You're being bold, having irrational confidence, that assertiveness that you're talking about, that alone, in a lot of cases, can trip the women from being blasé to now they're intrigued. They're like, whoa, what's this guy going on about himself that makes him so confident? And in your mind, it's like you're just faking it until you make it. That alone can get the ball moving in the right direction. So,
and furthermore, you have to realize that women are like no woman is like as confident as a man.
Mm-hmm.
So like they're always insecure. That stems from the fact that their validation has to all come externally. So their worth comes from what people say it is.
Yeah.
Which furthermore means that they don't really know their own league. Their league is what kind of guys approach them. Really, I mean,
sort of.
Over time, they can like develop a sense of it, but it's never concrete ever. Especially when they see themselves changing over time, their bodies are changing, they're not as attractive as they used to be. It's never, their sense of self is never for sure. So, if you're a guy who approaches her, there's always a chance, like in her world, the guys who have been in her league have approached her. So
it's very sound. And you see this flux throughout women's lives when they're younger, especially if they're hot, the quote unquote hot girls, where the guys that are always approaching them, especially, it depends on the environment as well. But when you're young, you've got these loud bars, loud clubs. The guys that are going to approach them are the guys that are cocky, confident. So right there, they're naturally attractive because they're able to overcome a lot of the environment variables that will preclude more meek men from approaching in the first place. So there's this screening process that kind of happens naturally in those younger years when they go out partying and clubbing. Later on, once they get a little bit older, they're approaching the wall, maybe they're late 20s, early 30s, the dynamics change. They're not going out to these kinds of places. there's not the same kind of screening process. There's a lot of different dynamics at play where the quality of men that are now approaching them has changed. And they're going to, like you were saying, where they're a reflection of the men that now approach them. Their worth is. And you see this where it's a really hard thing to see for a lot of women to accept. This is why you end up with women who are 40 plus, well into their 40s, wanting the alpha Chad, because that's what they got when they were 21 at their peak. So there's these dynamics at play. We talk about this on Wednesday show now and then too. But yeah, you're absolutely right that quality changes over time.
But their alpha widowing is the thing too, and I don't mean to like skip over that, but I don't really want to. It's not really what I'm talking about. Like, yes,
it's funny that you mentioned that.
Alpha guy can like get a girl, and then she'll set that standard forever. But that's like
right.
Yeah.
So for those that are interested in alpha widowing, we're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. That's the core crux of the whole show. So, but it'll also be from a red pill women perspective. So just be mindful of that if you are interested in this subject. I think we've covered this one to death. I do want to get on to the next one. Is there any last thoughts on this?
I think that's it.
All right. And the last one, rule 9. Apologizing for a lack of game isn't game. And this kind of goes right back to Deering and that self-deprecation and all the negativity that comes with that. Don't do that. You gain nothing by telling her why you shouldn't be worthy of her.
Yeah, let me expand on this law for a little bit. Like, there's things that you should not do in any relationship or an acquaintance or a girl that you're trying to game, and that's exactly what we said earlier about not daring, which is you shouldn't defend, explain, excuse, or rationalize. And all of those things really have one kind of central tenet, which is that don't put anybody else's judgment on the same level as your own, sense of your own frame, like your own sense of origin and where you're coming from. Because if you are, then you're literally like pulling people up to your level, and you shouldn't do that. Like, people should be below your level, and that's just a status thing. And again, it goes back to status creates desire. The only other thing that I would touch on here is the self-deprecation piece, and that's, again, it goes back to status. Is if you're self-deprecating, you don't decrease your status. It's all about status. The predator does not care what the prey thinks about them. Bingo. All right. Or should not, at least. Not, yeah. And that's not to say that guys need to be predators. All right. Now, someone's going to see this at some point. Like, oh my God, they said don't. No. Yeah, you're totally an idiot. No, but to dig into the bullets here, like, once you've accepted yourself and presented yourself as a complete douche, in quotes, there's no going back to confidence with a woman. And this is right out of the Rational Male blog. If you haven't seen it, links are down below. Yeah. So don't present yourself as anything other than a calm, cool, collected, and confident guy. Mm-hmm. Yep. At all times. If you can. Everybody's going to stumble. Well, yeah. That's nature. That's life. But recognize what's going on. Try and correct as it happens. You should have that in mind. Yes. You should have that in mind all the time. Now, this next one I like. Never appeal to women's sympathies. I'll just go through the bullet points really quick. Her sympathies are given by her own volition, never when they are begged for. Women despise the obligation of sympathy. Nothing kills arousal like pity. Now, there's a corollary to this, and that's, I like what you said before the show. Be the seawall. Women's emotions are going to be like waves crashing against the seawall. You need to be there to just take the hit, tough it out. And what I was saying is that women are mirrors of men's emotional states. Guys who are fidgety, nervous, awkward, not very confident, women are going to pick up on that like nobody's business. It is their business. It's the screen guys who are weak. And when you're throwing out all of these weak signals, they're going to be repulsed by it. So I forget who wrote this. Well, I forget who wrote this post on the Red Pill, but it was women take the shape of women are like water. They'll fill the shape of the container that they're given. That might have been me, or might have been you. Or maybe I quoted it or I reposted it. Was Joe. Something. Just go ahead and take credit. I'll take the credit. I don't know. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I can't remember. It sounds like something I wrote long time ago. The general point of it is that, like, you give a woman a frame, right? If you have a strong
Right.
frame, you put that frame forth, and that woman will fill that frame, and she's not going to go outside the lines of that. She's going to fill it up, and she's going to that's going to be exactly what it is.
She won't
But-
go outside of that if she is a quality relationship material woman.
If your frame is strong, if you draw
That
hard
too.
boundaries, right? If it's a strong container, that's the container metaphor.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, you need both, but generally speaking, absolutely. If the container's weak, they're going to break it every time
Totally.
because they are going to test you every single day of your life. It's just the way it is. It's just these things happen in subtle ways, and we had a whole thing on shit tests before.
That relates to a couple of these bullets, but yeah, totally.
Yeah, but getting back to like I said with the sympathies, the energy, that men need to be the mirrors that women look to, and you got to be that stoic rock, because whatever energy that you're throwing off, they're going to see that, feel it, and it can either be a positive effect or a negative effect. You want to try and be that positive effect that they can that they feel comforted by in a lot of cases.
The challenge here is that women are not great at emotional support. They really are not in a relationship format. And I don't mean that as that's not an indictment. It's just like, sadly, you can't really lean on them too hard. You can't.
Oh, absolutely not. You can most times. This is one of the things I think we all have agreed on, is the moment that guys show vulnerability, women in a lot of cases will shut down. They stop being attracted right then and there. That's like the nail, one of the nails in the coffin right there. So you got to be mindful of that. This is where stoicism comes into play. There's a lot of books and philosophy and all this shit written on it, but you got to walk the walk. Sad to say, it's hard to be vulnerable as guys and maintain attraction and frame. Just the reality of it is, life isn't fair. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, you should never show vulnerability.
Yeah. I
Your
mean, there's time
girlfriend.
and places for it. There's where it's allowed. Like when your dad dies. Okay, yeah, there's gonna be some tough times ahead. Or a parent. But
No, God, yeah. I mean, if your
shit
kid
like
gets
that-
cancer, my Lord, like
When
that's not
but it should be where things are accepted, and most women will give you a pass on it. But again, attraction is not a choice.
Well, let me draw a
So-
distinction here. So when you're in a relationship, here's what you should and should not expect from your woman, right? You should totally expect her to handle exactly what it is in the day-to-day that she's able to handle as the captain and first mate analogy of she's able to handle her stuff. She doesn't need input from you. She doesn't need you to lean on. And if you're going through some stuff, like I'll give you an example. Actually, this is a real life example. My grandfather is actually dealing with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, like fighting for his life, right? So my wife is, if things are affecting me, she's handling stuff day to day. She's handling her career. She's handling the household. She's handling the care of our daughter. If I've got to deal with stuff having to do with my grandfather. That said, I don't actually bring my emotional problems to her. I don't sit there and say, I'm really struggling with my anxiety, or I'm really struggling with this fear of not being able to see him again, or whatever it is. Like I'm not bringing that to her. So it's not the emotional support. It's almost logistical and kind of day-to-day relationship support. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Put you back on that. Yep, absolutely makes sense. I did want to throw a quick thing out to the patrons we have.
Oh, totally.
So Joe, Lee, Mr. Smith, Oliver, Olivier, Quarren, yes, please. Thank you all for supporting the channel. It helps out immensely. I just got the new cam link, so it should be here shortly whenever Amazon decides to ship stuff again. And we'll have a second camera up for the show.
I feel like we need some Patreon swag. We can talk about that on the after show.
Yeah, I've actually got another workshop coming up soon as well. We're going to do goal building, and we're still working out the price point. And there's going to be some stuff that's included with that, such as a free book of the Rational Male. So it's not set in stone yet. We're still working out the details, but it's coming. Either that or possibly Ryan's book. We'll see.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, definitely want to include some sort of swag with this and kind of make sure that guys are going through the process and taking this stuff seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a minor setback with the last workshop that we had some no-shows. So to avoid our time from being wasted, we'll put a cost to it. but you're going to get stuff to it. So it's basically a free class. Thereabouts. We'll see how it works out. But yeah, this is not to spam people about what we're trying to do here. This is not to make money. This is to make sure you guys are taking your time seriously, our time seriously. Because when we do the workshops, you got to show up. All right. So if you've got a little skin in the game, it's more of a reason for you to actually do your part.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we've kind of covered the core elements of the class tonight. Next week will be the 16 Commandments of Poon. If anybody has a way of getting hold of Royce Hartisti, whatever he calls himself these days, please get in touch with me because I would love to talk to the guy. I know he's in DC. I could bring him over to the house. He's down the road probably.
Mm-hmm.
But so now it's time to kind of start addressing the comments. Do you guys have any last final thoughts on the Iron Rules?
No, I think it all goes back to what James is saying is the status creates desire, Pierce.
Yep. It's good stuff, man. All right. So first question we had here, comment. With the rise of platforms like OnlyFans, more and more numbers of women are getting validated by men than ever before. How will this affect the game and cold approaching women in the next few years? This is something that I think it's going to be a replication of what we saw with the advent of social media. And what I mean by this is before Facebook, Tinder, and so forth was really popular, when you went to a bar, when you went to a club, you were only competing against the guys in that local area, that local venue, maybe at strip clubs, wherever you were at. If you're in a small town, you only had that small town to compete against. When social media kicked off, thanks Steve Jobs, world's biggest cockblock, it changed the game. Now you've got to be your best self and compete against everybody in your geographical region.
Don't blame Steve Jobs for all your problems.
He invented the iPhone. It all started right there. But
Al Gore invented the internet.
Yeah.
So how does this apply to what we're talking about right here? OnlyFans is kind of an example of this, just at a larger scale in terms of the magnitude of what it means. So now women aren't just getting attention; they're getting money. They're having sex on tape or on video. They're getting all kinds of stuff out of this, so they don't need guys anymore because so many simps are giving them money. Why would anybody pay for porn in this day and age? That boggles the mind.
Look, file this under the whole how to handle beta orbiters. Like once quarantine gets over, and you're talking about women that are used to getting, either validation or money or whatever you want to call it, like just, put yourself in a distinguishing position by not giving them that, right? Like if they're used to that, you're almost in a better position because you've read the sidebar material and you understand exactly how to differentiate yourself as a guy who just, I respect myself too much. I'm not a needy guy, and that's not of interest to me. And if you're a calm, cool, confident, collected, guy, then, that's going to stand out.
Yeah. And I think that if you're a guy with status and confidence, I don't think it really matters. You just have to figure out the kind of girl that you're eventually with, right? So that there might be more women like slutting it up, but sluts are always going to slut, and they always have. So
this goes back to the very first. This goes back to the very first episode we did with Goals and Desires. Take some time, figure out what the hell kind of woman you want. What are traits you're going to screen for? So if you know that you don't want strippers, you don't want porn stars, you don't want, which these girls who are doing these OnlyFans shows or whatever are just low-grade porn stars. They're low-grade escorts. So it's all kind of wrapped up in the same kind of negativity in to put a kind of finer point on it. If you don't want these things in women, then screen for it. Don't date them. That's all there is to it. But there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot more who've done it now than have in the past. That's the only gotcha.
They're trying to transactionalize the relationship.
Yeah. And
let me tell you, if you want to be in a relationship, you don't want to be transactionalized.
That's
or commoditized.
I've seen this before on the street where you just see somebody they were giving them out, handing them out, and then you see it and people pitch it. I've seen it walking in the streets. You see these things. Yeah.
Let me give you a quick example. Is like you go on Instagram, you express interest in a woman, and she reaches back out to you and says, "Oh, I would love to send you XYZ pictures if you want to subscribe for $9.99." Let me tell you that you expressed interest very naturally It had nothing to do with money, and she transactionalized that.
Mhm.
That's absurd to me.
Now there's the other side of this too, where you've got a girlfriend and maybe you guys want to do a show because you're extroverts and you want to make some money. If that's your thing, go for it. But if it's not your thing, also then don't go for it. Screen against it. But it
All I'm
is
saying
funny
is-
where there was a guy actually on one of the subreddits today posted this guy
Yeah,
on
dude.
Twitter tweeted to this woman that he paid her. She asked him on Twitter, "How are you doing?" And he said, "Not so good after I spent $3,700 and you ignored me. But other than that, I'm fine."
Oof.
Don't be that guy. All right.
No, but
Don't be that guy.
my point is,
Oh.
if you're gonna get involved in transactions, like know that you are getting involved in transactions. Meaning, like if you were like take sex out of it for a second. Like if you are gonna go online and play piano for money, like for contributions, like realize that if nobody's listening to you and nobody's listening to your songs and they don't like your songs, like don't get angry about that.
Mhm.
That's a whole thing, right?
All right. So we got a couple more here. Oh, James was at, yeah. Where do you find the QR codes? Yeah. Bus stop, Baltimore's. Like I
Can't
said,
say I have a lot of experience with this.
where I've seen this kind of shit was on just as litter on the streets.
Yeah.
That's big cities. Just, yeah. That's all I got to say on that. Here's another one. Let's see.
I love
What did
this.
he really mean by that? Have you guys ever trained
Oh
your?
my God.
This is what we're talking about. Frame,
Yes.
where you are establishing the boundaries of the relationship, what you expect, and if they value the relationship, if they feel that sense of dread because you have options, they're going to do things for you that they wouldn't have done for lesser guys. Now, it's not to say that you're going to train them like a dog, put a biscuit on their nose and they're going to jump for it. It's just establishing boundaries is what it normally comes down to.
James, you want to weigh in on this one? Because I have some strong opinions on this one.
Oh, strong.
I'm ready for
well,
this.
Oh, whoa. Well, yeah. I mean, you can train them. You can train them in the macro sense and in the micro sense. You can train them to do like, I don't know, whatever you want. Really, you just have to be high SMV. You can.
Well, oh man, you just jogged my memory too.
Very true.
Sex. So people say, "Well, why would you want a virgin?" Because they're not going to do whatever they're doing.
Oof.
You can teach them very quickly how to be good in bed based on your own needs too. So that whole argument is null and void in my opinion.
Mhm.
So when it comes to, do you want girls that are experienced or do you want girls who are inexperienced?
Oh yeah.
The difference between experienced and inexperienced is you on what you can teach them.
This goes back to iron rule number 7, which is start over. Why would you try and make it work, right? Like it's much more worthwhile training the woman that you want. So in the context of a marriage or a relationship, what I would say is, if you can remove your time and attention, and if you can control your emotions, like it's like that Pavlov's dog, right? Like you can train whoever you want, right? Like you can. This all goes back to covert communication, which is how women operate. And if you're not saying outright what bothers you, and you were just removing your time and attention, they will get the idea. They will start to understand exactly what it is that you like and don't like. And once you start to do that, that is exactly what Asif is talking about here when it has to do with rule number 7 and like training your women in your dating advice. And to your question of have you ever trained your girl? Yes, I've walked away from my wife when she's doing something I don't like. Like I've actively employed that as a tactic.
I think almost everybody has at one point or another, whether they've realized it or not.
Yeah.
This is just basic relationship dynamics. If something's going on that you don't like, you shut it down.
Why would you tolerate it?
Yeah.
You shouldn't.
Now, there's times and places where certain things need to be tolerated. There is an ebb and flow to the relationship. That's a given. We're not talking about that. We're talking about specific negative behaviors that you're screened against. You've made the intentions known. You've told them what your standards and expectations are and what will happen if they fail to measure up. And then you do what you said you were going to do. You follow through.
Here's my question is,
Yeah.
why would you foster anything negative in your relationship with anybody? That's not your romantic relationship, but even your friends or your family. Like, why would you foster a negative dynamic?
Why would you reward it? That's the important
why-
question. Yeah,
That's what I'm
why?
saying. Like, why would you feed into that? Why would you foster it? Why would you reward it? You wouldn't. You would actually, if somebody is approaching you in the wrong way, or if somebody is being rude or disrespectful, you say, I'm not saying overreact. I'm just saying, like, you know what? Yeah, this is rude or disrespectful. I'm gonna, remove myself from that.
Yep. There's been
Easy to
times
do.
where we've had to walk away, where just part of it is being that there's times to be that stoic guy where they're venting
Mhm.
and it just bounces off of you. You be the rock, and then they are going to mirror your stoic, your calm state. They're going to feed off that calmness, and it's going to settle them down. There's other times where they're being disrespectful to you. That's different. You got to shut that shit down.
Mhm.
All right. That's just so we're clear on that.
Yeah, there's a whole. If you want to talk about
Yeah.
passing shit tests, read the sidebar. Go back and look at Deering, because there's a lot of different strategies for passing shit tests. There's agree and amplify. There's nuking. There's fogging. There's pretty much ignoring and deflection. There's a lot of different tools for dealing with
pressure
shit
flips. There's so many.
pressure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All
There's a
so
lot
many.
of different. A lot.
When
of
in
different tools.
doubt, agree and amplify to absurdity. That's the most tried and true, safest one you can probably do.
Mhm.
The one that is ignore it, that can get you in trouble if it's a disrespectful kind of thing. If it's just them just
Totally.
blabbering on about some woman at work that pissed them off, ignoring it and being the stoic rock that I was talking about,
Mhm.
that's time for that. All right. You do not want to get wrapped up in their emotion and try to become Mr. Fix It.
But you got to
I've been
read
down
up
that
on
road
these,
myself.
test
and
them.
it's- Yeah. That's the other thing too, is all of these should be tested. Don't take our word for it. Go out there and try this stuff on your own. That's the whole reason I built this channel, is to take what we talk about in the manosphere and to turn it into actionable stuff guys can do in the real world. You're going to have to A/B test stuff. That's just the way it is. So too much of this gets read and talked about and debated and never put into practice. That's just mental masturbation. I want you guys to be proactive and take this shit out into the real world and better your lives. That's the whole reason for being for this channel. All right. So now that that's over with, I think we're going to get on to the next question. Comment.
From Backyard Brawny. There we go.
Please elaborate on the sunk cost fallacy as it relates to number 7 and X's.
I love this question.
Going back
James.
to number 7.
I nominate
I
you.
don't know. I have no idea. What do you? Oh,
Yeah, take it is.
sunk cost fallacy that relates to rule number 7.
Yeah.
I
We
would
as
say
men-
that
Not
you
rooting
need
through the
to-
garbage.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
Men like to fix things. On and on and on.
Right. So
I mean, whatever. Like, don't the sunk cost fallacy is the sunk cost fallacy for a reason. It's don't do it.
Well, this is kind of the
you should
same
have enough
thing-
abundance to not have to worry about it. Really, honestly, if you don't have the abundance to deal with it, you're not at the place where you should be, in my opinion.
now there's a different way of approaching this from single guys who are just dating around to guys that are in long-term relationships or have kids or are married. So if you're married, you got kids, you'll see this all the time where people will just stay for the kids. That's one of the worst things you can do, in my opinion. I've been down this road myself. I've seen others who have done it.
I agree.
Trust me, it's not worth the time and frustration and the bullshit the kids are going to be exposed to. Go your separate ways. Let all the negativity drop. Where it just becomes the only time you should ever have to deal with somebody in that kind of sense is, here's the check. Don't talk to me.
I would
Until
agree
it's
with
time
you.
for the
So,
kids to come over.
so my parents are both divorced, and this is not my first marriage. I'm in my second marriage. But what I would say to that is, think about things before you blow them up. Just give it a second thought, right? Like that. If things are going to be better between you and your significant other, if you go your separate ways, that's fine. But at least give it a second thought and think: is this really the best route to go for me, for them? And if you don't care about them, then just think about you. Like that's whatever it is. But the simple fact is, like, give it a second consideration. If kids are involved, like you owe it to yourself to at least think about what are the consequences here.
Well, there's also, so this kind of applies to both types of relationships: long-term, married, having kids, or if you're just dating around.
Yeah.
And that's to consider, and you're going to make this decision on your own. What is the threshold for the amount of work I'm willing to put in to maintain the relationship or fix the problems, or to just scrap it and move on to the next?
Bingo.
You have to, this is something that we can't tell you what to do. You have to make this determination on your own of what is that threshold of how much work you're willing to put in. Some guys are going to have a hair trigger, and the first time they fuck up, they're gone. Other guys are going to be more persistent, for lack of a better word, and keep plugging away in a dead relationship that should have been cut a long time ago. So
Yeah.
where that threshold is at is entirely up to you, and it's going to be dependent on the situation. You
Look-
need to come up with those boundaries for yourself.
100% correct. Like Backyard Bronny brings up a good point. As men, we often feel like there is something needing to be fixed. Look, I'll tell you what. If you are looking at a relationship that failed, and you are thinking that something needs to be fixed, I'll tell you what it is. It's you. You need to be fixed. You need
Absolutely.
to fix your mental model. You need to fix your way of understanding the relationship and where it went wrong. And so, like, invest your efforts there. That's my advice.
Yeah.
This is where
The best way to keep
the male
Go ahead.
action plan from what was his name? Athol K comes into play.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Bingo.
Where you maximize yourself, and if she does not do the same to reciprocate because she's afraid of losing you, because now your options are out the wazoo, because maybe you got fat in a relationship and now she resents you for marrying a fatty. And if you get into shape, but she let herself go as well and she's not reciprocating, well, what happens is if you guys do split up, you're in a much better position to find the next relationship thereafter
Yeah.
because you've improved yourself. So whenever, make sure that what's happening isn't a result of your own failings. And in a lot of cases, it really will be.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're just crazy and there's nothing you can do about it. And you screened poorly getting into a relationship with this person in the first place.
Bingo.
Maybe
So
that's your mistake. And now you're going to learn from that lesson.
the point is, if you feel like there's something that needs to be fixed, is it her or is it you? And if you feel like you need to fix her, dude, you are misguided in a
You
big
need
way.
to lead by example in that case.
Yeah. And if you need to fix you, then fix you. Like, do what you
Yep.
need to do to fix yourself.
Hit the gym, lose the weight, dress better, make better friends, make more money. Who knows
lean
what it
on
is?
your friends, lean on
Yeah.
mentors and masters to do what you need to do. Yeah.
And that's why we're here over in the Discord channel. We'll chat afterwards. But
Bingo.
look for mentors who are better than you that can round out the rough edges and give you guys, I don't want to say advice, but who can give you examples to lean on, especially those who have been through situations similar to what you're in right now. This is what's great about the Manosphere is you've got the collected knowledge of millions of men over decades, if not eons. A lot of the stuff we're talking about goes way back to Plato.
Dude, please
So-
learn from my mistakes. Learn from everything I've done wrong.
Yep, that's exactly what I've been saying from day one. Learn from my mistakes so you don't have to repeat them. And also replicate our successes if you can.
100%.
Where we're at here. Our LDR is a bad idea, always a bad. Always is an absolute. So I'm going to say no right off the bat.
We covered this a little bit last week, right?
Yeah.
I will say yes, though. Always is a bad idea.
Well, so for James, what if you have? I hate doing what ifs, but think of it this way: having the open LTR like Faz and it is written. There's guys out there who do this well. Where it's a half open LTR, where you've got a primary girlfriend and then you have other side
Open
girlfriends.
LDR.
Yeah, what is it? No, oh,
You said LTR.
But that's
He's
my
not
talking
mind
what,
is on
LDR.
long-term
that's not
relationships.
what he's asking
He's talking about long distance relationships.
Yes.
Never mind.
That's
Forget
not
I
what he's
said anything.
asking about.
All right.
Yeah.
Is
God
there a
damn.
way to control
That was really
my
good run.
girl from not cheating with me or not cheating on me while being away?
No, you can't
Yeah.
control that
No.
shit.
The answer is no.
And
There's no way to control it.
never do
The
LDR.
best you can do is set the bar so high of how awesome you are
Just it's
by
dread.
maximizing your own attractiveness, getting, like I said, building the dread, having the status, taking
So-
everything that you are, maximizing it to as high of a level as you possibly can, and you kind of just hope for the best. And you screen for women that will hopefully respect the boundaries of the relationship, of whatever you guys have set. And that's going to vary from person to person.
Oh,
It honestly
here's
always comes back to abundance. Because if you're truly maximized, then girls in your area, local girls, what's the ad? Hot women in your area.
hot local singles.
Hot
Yeah.
local singles,
Yeah.
yes, they will be down. So what do you do? You know, if you honestly have that abundance, you're not going to be in an LDR. You're just going to be like, no. So yeah.
Yep. And there's also different types of LDRs to consider as well. I was in
What-
one that was like semi. You got the ones who are like across country or way the hell away where the best you can do is see them once a year, once every other year, something like that. Then you got ones where you might only see them once a week. That's a wide gulf in what qualifies as an LDR. So make sure consider that as a factor as well.
Mm.
And because in a lot of cases where technically it's an LDR, but you're only seeing them or you're still seeing them as often as you would have a regular girlfriend anyways, like once a week, that's still, you can get away with that. That's fine in a lot of cases. You know,
No, here's why I love James's response to all of these things is because
abundance.
he is
Yeah.
he is so wary of all the pitfalls in all the best ways. Like he doesn't go into anything with he's not jaded about, I'm gonna get my unicorn, or I'm gonna get the the best possible relationship that I could possibly get. I guess what I mean is, like, I respect James for the fact that he's pragmatic about when he wants to get into these situations about a long distance relationship. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? I guess there are some exceptions. There are some circumstances where you could say, yeah, it could work out. Yeah, it could not work out. What's great about James is he'll sit there and say, you know what? This is not going to work for most guys. This is, absolutely not. Don't do it. And here's why. You have better options.
Yep.
I mean, I just think, like, it's really, really important to make sure that you're 100% never thinking from a beta frame at all. Like, if you are considering an LDR, the true root cause at the base of everything, the foundational cause, is that you don't have enough abundance to satisfy your needs.
I love that.
And or you have one-itis, which is bad. So,
oh man, that's terrible. That's
you could not be more right. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and talk about that for just 1 second? One-itis. This is something I think a lot of guys miss out on.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have one-itis, it means you don't have enough options. Honestly. That's my opinion. Like, I just feel like that's like the base. You can talk about it in any other sense that you want, but if you have one-itis, it's just, it's like, it's a one girl who's giving you attention, and that's like all you can get. If you have attention from a lot of hot girls, you're not going to get one-itis.
100%. Here's where one-itis is insidious for me, is like when you are talking to a woman and you start to think about, like, oh, it's different with her. You know what that is? That's one-itis, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's not entirely different. Like, so you may not be putting her up on a pedestal. You may not be saying, like, oh, she's my unicorn. She's better than any other woman I've ever met. You might not be saying that, but you might be making these little excuses for her behavior and saying, like, well, I'm not sure that's true. She's like, other women have said this to me, but I don't know that's true for her. Yada, 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 yada. The point is, that's in all of their forms. It's one-itis. Like 99.99% of women are, from a evolutionary biology standpoint, like pretty similar. Like, it's for the firmware is there, right? I think that's what your point is.
Yeah.
So something else that I wanted to touch on this statement here, where the girlfriend, one thing led to another, and they somehow slept with a low status guy. This is what we talked about before, where they're not necessarily low status. It's the perception of their future status. Maybe that's what they're attracted to. The wannabe rock stars, the wannabe
let's read this.
Wannabe actors. Yeah.
I have seen some high status men getting cheated on by their girlfriend, where one thing led to another and they somehow slept with a low status guy. Why does that happen, and how to prevent this? Well, there's two things here. Like, number one, women have a very pluralistic dating strategy or mating strategy. Like, go back to the last video when it comes down to, like, beta bucks, alpha fucks, all that stuff. Like, women will want it. You may see them as a low status guy, but they may see them as a comfortable option, right? So it's all in the marketing of that thing. But the point is, like, when women will actually entertain an option of a low status guy, and I'm using air quotes, low status guy, but when a guy like that is hanging around, first of all, you're not doing your job if you're in a relationship with this woman. But secondly, a guy that's an orbiter, it really shouldn't be that much of a threat to you. And if she sleeps with them, it's, oh, it just happened, and there's no accountability on her part. But the simple fact is, the guy was really like a viable option. So the way to get ahead of this, Asif, is don't make other guys a viable option. Like, be as alpha as you can be. Like, don't worry about other guys. Don't worry about Chad. Like, become Chad. That thing. But the other piece of that is, if your girl's gonna sit there and like entertain other guys and say, "Oh, one thing led to another," then just, you know what, have nothing to do with her.
Yep. Next. That's all there is to it. That's how you kind of respond to that. It's just
Mhm.
you should have abundance. You should be able to immediately move on and just nope. She's no longer in the circle. She has now excluded herself from being a
Yeah.
prospect. She's like, oh, you're an idiot. Just next them. Pat her on the head. Next. That's the kind of conceptual way of looking at it. She made a dumb mistake that just cost her something awesome, which is you.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you become the prize and you have that empowerment that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That comes from having options.
And anyway, I don't really know if I would worry about. I don't really know what you explicitly mean by a high status man, but like,
yeah, it's very ephemeral in how that works. It's it's very.
are you
up-
talking
open
about
to
like a
interpretation.
high like, are you talking about a rich guy? Because if it's a rich guy, if you think like a rich guy is like a high status or like high status in his company or like whatever, that's like alpha beta dynamic.
When
right
you have
there.
a
Like,
red
and what do you
pill
think a low
podcast.
status guy is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
like
this,
the low status guy could be like a Machiavellian kind of guy.
Yeah.
Or
We're
like,
not talking about Tom Cruise's wife cheating on him with a bartender at some place. No, this isn't what we're talking about.
that's not even.
Yeah,
Ugh,
this is
yikes.
now what you could see is where you've got, I don't know, business executives or oh god, what's his name? Elon Musk. Guy's blue pill to the core, but
Oh yeah.
very, very old school kind of mentality when it comes to dating and relationships. You see this play out all the time with a lot of celebrities, in fact. And even PUAs, same thing. A lot of blue pill mentalities and how they treat the relationships they actually get into. And a lot of these guys, even though they're good at getting women's attention and screening for women that are interested in them,
Mhm.
once they get into relationships, all bets are off and they go right back into old patterns where the
Yeah.
women then end up cheating on the next guy that comes along, the hypergamy kicks in, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So kind of getting more to his question here, it's one thing led to another is code, just so you know. And then you've got somehow slept with a low status, somehow slept like it was an accident. Dude just
Just
slipped and fell on his
somehow.
dick. It ain't like that. All right. There's a lot more to this than I think a lot
Hey,
of
it
guys
just
give it credit
happened.
for. It just happened. No.
Just
I
happened.
somehow banged your mom last night.
Yeah. No. This is and
Just happened.
so we've already addressed the low status guy and the high status guy. It's relative. And it's also open to perspective or perception. Attraction is not a choice. Perception makes reality. These are different elements at play. If it was a Tom Cruise wife cheating on him with somebody else situation, that is wildly outside the norm of what we're talking about here.
Yep.
We're talking about
that's
some
like-
guy that was in his little social circle, might have been the alpha dude or a high status guy in that sense, but the wife or the girlfriend cheated on him, which happens all the time, with
Mhm.
somebody else who has a perceived higher status.
Yeah.
Or maybe didn't have it. Maybe it was just estranged and she got drunk and it was just a hot guy. And that was the status. So the drive was looked from looks. There's
Mhm.
so many different ways that this can kind of play out. Without more details, we really don't know. But it could have been just the guy was the business owner, the girlfriend dating him because he was beta bucks, and a hot guy came along and she hooked up with him. It could be that simple. That happens all the time. So why does that happen and how to prevent this? You can't prevent this unless you are, like we said, the best she's ever going to get. It's the only way you can really prevent that. And even then, there's no guarantee.
Bingo. Yeah.
Especially when alcohol is involved. That's the big wild card I think a lot of folks don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
And this is why avoiding the appearance of impropriety is so goddamn important. By avoiding these situations that can put them in a compromising position, sometimes physically, you don't want women that are going to do that. So women that avoid the appearance of impropriety tend to be better long-term relationship bets and long-distance relationship bets if you want to do that route. So think about that. Make sure you're putting out your standards and expectations and what happens if they fail to measure up. It's not just going to be, if you do this, I do this. It's not that simple.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it's a complex subject. And it happens over time throughout the screening process that we call dating.
And even attraction is so fluid. Like I see your details. You just commented with more details, and it's like things in the moment as well. Like you can be charming, and the tingles are also something that you have to consider. Like if this guy's charming, he's got frame. Yeah, they get drunk. It's like
And yep, there it is.
anything and everything can happen in that sort
Yeah.
of situation.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is where alcohol kicked in, made a big mistake, and now she may find herself alpha widowed if they break up.
But something I commented to somebody a long time ago on the subreddit, where they were confused, like how good-looking guys can have horrible dating lives, and it's because they just don't have frame. You have to have frame.
Yep. That's why it's rule number one.
Or a mission, right? Like no
Right.
personal mission or purpose. Like the point that I'm trying to hone in on here is like, if you don't know what you want out of life, and you're going to hone in on a guy that's, encroaching on your relationship, what do you want? The whole point is, if a guy is giving you a hard time, or if a guy was giving your girl a hard time, the real question is, what are you offering? What are you bringing to the table? If you're offering a better vision, if you're more attractive, then what would she want with him? Honestly, like what would she really want with another guy? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like a high SMV alpha, she's never like, so rarely it has to be better than you. If you're like actually engaging her in an exciting relationship, which
that's
most
the
guys
thing.
aren't.
These usually aren't exciting relationships, the side things anyways. It's mostly cheating from an alcohol-fused kind of fueled kind of situation. That's where I think we see this most often, is whenever you've got the guy who they had no intention of it. There was no intentionality. One thing truly did lead to another because their judgment was impaired because they were drunk. And then all the emotions go, or I should say logic goes out the door. This is where raw lust, passion, what's the heat of the moment kind of stuff kicks in. There's no real way to kind of avoid that except avoiding the appearance of impropriety, not going those, putting yourself in those situations in the first place.
Right.
So there's not much more I think we can really say about that. And she did, of course she's going to regret it.
Yeah.
Trust is gone. And now the important thing about trust, this regret, this is what's going to be shocking to a lot of guys.
It's tough to rebuild.
Well, no, I was going to say that they don't regret what happened. In many cases, they just regret because they got caught.
Getting caught.
That's the key. So, and not always, but more often than not, you're not going to hear them talk with their girlfriends. And this is one of the benefits of growing up with a lot of women, having a lot of female friends throughout life.
Yeah.
Where they can talk about this stuff openly with friends. And how can I put this without us getting the channel banned outright? Yeah, they might actually talk about it and be elated, but they'll have a sense of regret, like, oh shit, what did I do? Because now everything's at risk. It's not, oh shit, what did I do? I should never have done that. This is the wrong thing to do. It's now everything's at risk. That's where the regret comes in. And this is where we talked about before, opportunistic versus idealistic. The way men and women approach relationships there's some overlap, but there's also some things that are wildly different. And I think this is a hard thing for a lot of guys to grok. So just be mindful that the way you approach relationships is not necessarily how women are going to approach relationships. So the way they see these kinds of one-off events can be wildly different. And don't get butthurt by it. There's no value judgment being made. It's the acceptance of reality that men and women are different. All right?
I would agree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You want to call it on that?
Oh, yeah. This is they're saying the same thing here. Regret what they did. They regret the consequences of their actions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah. Not always, but often. So yeah, it's we're going for about 90 minutes right now. I think we have hit all of the high points. So we're going to transition over to Discord. The link is down below in the description.
Yeah.
And if you guys have any comments, concerns, questions, blah, 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 just comment on the video here so we'll see it. Also hit us up in chat on the Discord server. Any final thoughts? Like, subscribe, you know the deal. We have the Patreon site that can help fund the YouTube studios.
Look, these are fundamentals for a reason.
Fundamentals. Mike, I am going to get you a background at some point, man. I'm hooking you up. All right.
All right, fair enough.
We're
Same with James.
we're gonna talk about booping in the Discord. So
Oh boy, here we go.
We're gonna do that.
All right. So
Come on
thank you
over.
guys for joining us. We will see you
Jump
over in
on
just
in.
a bit. Yep. All right. And we are out.